This is Fox 5 News at 5.
A dramatic hostage crisis caught on camera. A suspected bank robber walks out with a gun to a teller's head. Police officers with weapons drawn wait for an opportunity to fire. Then, in an instant, everything changes. The suspect slips on the snow, the hostage runs for her life, and this nerve-wracking ordeal comes to a violent end. Thanks for joining us tonight at 5. I'm Sean Yancey.
And I'm Brian Bolter. It is the kind of thing you hear about, but never actually see. Tonight, you will see how a real-life bank robbery turned hostage situation went down in Tacoma Park, Maryland. It all unfolded around 9:30 this morning at a Capital One bank on University Boulevard. Skyfox hovered overhead as the suspect walked out slowly with a gun to a teller's head.
Police were on the scene within a minute of the robbery, waiting outside as the suspect tried to make his getaway. With weapons drawn, about a dozen officers tried to defuse the hostage crisis as the tension escalated.
You can see the suspect there, one arm wrapped around the hostage, the other pointing a gun at the officers, beginning to back away, and then suddenly, as he eases around that ice right there, takes one step off the curb, bam, he slips. The hostage makes a break for it, and police step in, killing the suspect with a barrage of bullets.
Fox 5 was live on the air as this dramatic scene unfolded today. We have reporters covering every angle of this story tonight, but we begin with Paul Wagner in Tacoma Park. He's been on the story from the very beginning. Paul?
Sean and Brian, at 9:22 this morning, this man who's described as an Hispanic man who lives in this area in his 40s walked into this bank branch behind me armed with a 9mm pistol. He also had what appeared to be a bomb. Immediately, a customer inside tried to jump the man. The man then took his gun and pistol whipped that man. Tacoma Park police said immediately they started getting calls. The first was from a teller inside the bank who said there was a robbery going down. The second call came from a teller who ran out of the bank and called 911. The third call came from an alarm company saying a robbery was going down. Within a minute, a Tacoma Park sergeant was on the scene. He could see inside. He got on his radio. He started describing what was happening. What you're about to see next is the few minutes that took place after this gunman leaves the building with his hostage. 9 minutes after police first received a 911 call for a bank robbery in progress, the gunman emerges from the front door with a hostage. As he sees the officers outside with guns drawn, the gunman starts moving to his right. Within seconds, the money he's been given explodes. You can see the red dye going into the air and all over the money. As the officers watch, the gunman doesn't appear to flinch. Instead, continuing to the right with his hostage, past a sub shop and a restaurant. As the gunman reaches the curb, he's got his arm around the hostage. It appears the gun is to her head. Suddenly, the gunman loses his footing. With nothing to hold her now, the hostage takes off running. She's just out of reach as the gunman takes off after her. But by then, the officers have a clean shot and take it. 6 officers open fire, 3 from Tacoma Park, 3 from Prince George's County. Once on the ground, wounded, the man is handcuffed. Standard procedure for officer safety. About an hour and 15 minutes ago, Montgomery County Police, Tacoma Park Police, and Prince George's County Police gave us an update on everything they could on what took place. They said that the suspect was killed on the scene. He was never transported. We also learned that once he was inside the bank, he was actually pointing the pistol at a number of different people. When he got behind the bulletproof glass, he had a bag and he was putting money in it himself. But the police now say a smart-thinking teller took a dye pack and put the dye pack inside the bag. There was a good Samaritan, as the police are describing this person, and we want to now tell you a little bit about that. This is Assistant Chief Lou Tracy describing what he saw from the bank cameras inside the bank.
It was kind of like a good Samaritan. He noticed that something was being pushed forward like a device. That was the hoax device. And remember, the individual also had one of these hoax devices, the same description I gave you earlier, on his person. So obviously the bomb squads from Prince George's County as well as Montgomery County Fire Rescue Bomb Squad had to obviously render it safe. But yes, it was a good Samaritan. The teller actually saw the weapon coming out, the Good Samaritan saw the weapon, and he went to try to, grab that weapon to try to make sure nothing occurred.
We look at this video almost like you're at a stadium and you're looking down and you can see the whole field. Well, these guys, you're on the field, it looks completely different. Everybody has their own vision, and the officers, from what we're seeing, performed really very, very well.
One of those officers was wounded. It's been described as a graze wound. They believe it was a ricochet. And we also have been told that hostage that was taken was very calm, cool, and collected, according to the police who have looked at the video from inside the bank. Sean?
I can't imagine what it was like for them. It was very dramatic to watch. Paul, you gave us a little information about the gunman. Early on, there was talk that did he act alone? Have police made that determination at this point?
They believe they know who he is. They're not releasing that information at this point, and they may release it once they've been able to notify the next of kin. But they say that he lives in this area. They're trying to get search warrants now, and they're going to go to his home and try and search and see what they may be able to find.
All right, Paul Wagner, thank you.
Alluded to right there, every single person at this chaotic scene has a unique perspective on how these events unfolded. As you can see, it all went down near other shops and stores. Fox 5's John Hanrahan arrived to the intense moments just after the shootout. John, tell us what you saw.
Well, first, let me contribute another nugget of information. I don't think that there was a communications problem between the robber and the people inside the bank and/or the police, because one lawman told reporters that the robber was speaking in both English and Spanish and appeared to understand both. The bank, the Capital One Bank that was hit today by this robbery, is rather unusual in its layout. It's got two separate entrances. The one over this shoulder is actually facing University Boulevard, and the one beyond the Starbucks faces New Hampshire Avenue. That is where the gunman came out with his hostage. That's where the shooting. I was located directly behind the Starbucks. I got here about 20 minutes after the shooting, and I got to tell you, the situation was very uncertain and a little scary, because the first thing I heard when I arrived, a gentleman was carrying a one-year-old baby. I think he was coming to a pediatrician in this area, and a police officer put his hands up and said, "Sir, you are in danger. Your child is in danger. Leave right now." At that point, I knew that this was an unsettled and scary situation. There was a massive police presence at the rear of the Strip shopping center where the bank is located. That was partly because police from 3 different departments converged here, but there was also uncertainty. Yes, the main suspect was down, felled by police bullets. Officers on the scene and witnesses could see that plainly.
Police surrounded him, so he was like trying to push this girl and then run away. So they shot at him, and then at the shooting, they shot one police from the leg. But they shot at the guy, and then he fell down there. I think maybe dead or something. Yeah.
Did he move once he was on the ground? Could you tell?
When he was on the ground, he was shaking, and then they just handcuffed him.
But there was always the possibility that a second or third suspect might be involved in the robbery. That alone would be reason to assemble and deploy a special operations squad. And since the first robber had come into the bank with what appeared to have been a bomb, and according to police he left a second package inside the bank, officers had to make sure that no explosives were involved. Thus, the bomb squad was also here. A canine officer was called. After the scene was cleared of the possibility of a working explosive, you could see the tension melt away among the officers that I was observing. Now, the video you just saw in that report was shot primarily by Doug Wilkes, Fox 5 photographer, and there was a little bit in there from Eric Lee, our chief photographer also. I have more information on the phony bomb, what police are calling 2 of them, hoax devices. They were identical, according to a preliminary report. They consisted, one of them, by the way, was left in the bank, and one of them was on the person of the gunman. They consisted of a kitchen sponge wrapped in aluminum foil. Then there was some duct tape around that with copper wires protruding. Again, one was left in the bank, which made officers very nervous about marching in there even after the gunman was shot down. And the other was found on the body of the gunman, strapped right here by his upper left-hand shoulder. Again,
they were hoax bombs. They were not real explosives, Brian.
Phony bombs like phony guns. They are treated as the real thing by the police. John Henrihan tonight.
As we reported, one of those police officers was hurt during this hostage situation. Take a look at this video again. A bullet grazed his leg. You can see him sort of hop out of the way. He was taken to Prince George's Hospital Center for treatment. Fox 5's Bob Barnard is on the scene there tonight. Bob, we hear he's doing much better, doing okay.
That's right, Sean. He was treated in the emergency room here and released just a couple of hours later. He was brought in by ambulance under police escort. His injuries not life-threatening, and yet there were a good many officers from both Prince George's and Montgomery counties standing by. A source here at Prince George's Hospital Center says the teller taken hostage was also brought here just to be checked out. She too spent just a short time here, nothing serious. Assistant Chief Drew Tracy of the Montgomery County Police Department describes for us the nature of all the injuries suffered today.
A lone individual who was going to visit the bank actually got in a scuffle with the gunman. From that scuffle, he was hit in the head several times by that handgun, which had a trauma wound to his head, and he's fine. Secondly, the suspect obviously was shot. He was deceased at the scene. The hostage teller that came outside received no injuries. She had a minor scrape to her elbow. She's fine. One Prince George's County officer had a graze wound to the leg, and we believe it was probably from a ricochet of the rounds fired at the scene.
Now, the Prince George's officer injured here, we're told, is a 5-year veteran patrol officer assigned to the Hyattsville District Station. And Prince George's Police Major Andy Ellis says they're going to wait 24 hours to release his name. That's a standard procedure when an officer is shot. They also say that he was one of 3 officers from Prince George's who fired his weapon during the shooting after the hostage taking. Again, this officer is going to be okay, Sean.
And that is good news tonight, Bob. Thank you.
Tacoma Park Police watch over a generally quiet community. Today, that silence was shattered and their skills tested. Fox 5's Audrey Barnes has been looking into that angle of the story. Audrey.
Brian, this police department was very busy today. Officers from several different jurisdictions have been coming and going, many of them escorting witnesses here to be interviewed. On the way in, one of those witnesses told me he saw everything. He says he was standing outside the Starbucks right next to the bank and described that chaotic scene as a scene straight out of a movie. More than 24 witnesses were brought to Tacoma Park for interviews. Montgomery County Police detectives are asking the questions since the investigation includes 3 Tacoma Park police officers involved in the shooting. Chief Ron Rakucci says he hasn't seen a crime quite like this one in more than 4 decades of law enforcement.
I've been in policing for 43 years, so I've had a little bit of everything. This is one of the, this is a little bit different than anything I've seen before. The fact that we were there within less than a minute, and the fact that coming out of the bank with a hostage, that doesn't happen every day. It's probably the first time I've seen that in my career.
So the bottom line is Tacoma Park Police don't see a lot of crime. They had 652 incidents last year, no murders, 1 rape, and now this. One of the Montgomery County detectives who's helping with the interview says as far as they go, they expect to be here for quite some time. Brian, back to you.
Barnes tonight. Our coverage continues on myfoxdc.com. You can watch the video in its entirety on our website. We also have a photo gallery of today's events. It's all on our homepage.
We're following another big story tonight. People are still without power 2 days after this winter storm paralyzed our region.
So when can they expect the lights to come back on? Power company officials take to the radio to deliver some answers. Gary.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Some clipper snow today didn't amount to much. We could have some clipper snow again tomorrow. Talk about it. Full forecast looking towards the weekend coming up.
Thousands of families are still in the dark as utility companies struggle to get that power back on 2 days after the storm. Now, at last check, Pepco still has about 74,000 customers without power. BG&E, 20,300, and Dominion, Virginia, 5,100 customers in the dark. Fox 5 Stacey Cohan is here now with more on how people are coping. Stacey, we went up through about 30 hours, so I'm feeling for people who still don't have their power back on.
I'll tell you, it's tough. I got mine back overnight last night, and I felt very fortunate. Now, for most of us, losing power is just annoying, or maybe it's inconvenient. You have to stay with friends or possibly spring for a hotel. But for some folks, days without power can lead to financial disaster. If this is your idea of a knight in shining armor, then you must be one of the thousands still without power. We did find Pepco crews working through this morning's flurries, but clearly there is much left to be done. A quick cruise around the city and surrounding suburbs reveals multiple tree-lined streets, and not in a good way. Power lines drooping across a road and over a car are a sign that many folks remain in the dark, cold homes, powerless to do anything about it. Now, when you and I lose power, we may have to throw away milk or cheese in the refrigerator that's spoiled. But what if your refrigerator looks like this?
Everything from ice cream, which is already puddles, all the way down the line to more meat.
The Tacoma Park Silver Spring Co-op workers are watching money melt away. Without electricity, much of their product will be unsafe to serve because it won't meet federal guidelines for safe food storage.
It does just have to be trash. Not even the employees can take it home. So we do wind up wasting just a lot, which obviously for a green company, it's sad news.
It's also sad news for neighbors, also in the dark, who keep stopping by hoping for fresh food.
Don't know what to say. It's very frustration for us and the members and the community.
This is all meat and cheese. We have all this milk and yogurt and everything else that's going to waste.
We actually gonna donate for the local shelters, but we have to see whether it's really is it safe to donate or not.
The co-op workers say this is the fourth time in the last 18 months they've lost power for multiple days. And that's enough for this small store to consider a major investment.
Definitely we consider this a high priority to get a generator, yeah, because of the business and also the community.
Now, Pepco tells us there are about 1,000 people working right now on restoring your power. Crews have come from Ohio, Delaware, and New Jersey, as well as Pennsylvania, to assist. And although most of you should have power back by 11 p.m. tonight, the utility president says some will be waiting until Sunday. Brian.
All right, Stace, this morning, representatives from our area's 3 big power providers did a little damage control. Talked about this week's outages after the storm and how crews responded.
Because of the timing of the storm being late at night and the difficulty with the travel conditions, it was very difficult for us to do a damage assessment yesterday morning, and I know everybody wanted to know when their lights were going to come on.
Once the system came up, once we started to experience some outages, they would be in a better position to get to those locations. So at some point, you're going to ask me, what did you learn from the last time? Well, this is something new that we've done.
Makes you wonder what the perfect storm would be for the power companies, right? That was Rodney Blevins with Dominion Virginia Power and Pepco President Tom Graham. They joined Mark Plotkin on WTOP Radio. Both companies said they continue to learn from each storm on how to do a better job the next time.
Well, I don't know how many of you saw snowflakes today, but they certainly started coming down again, and it looks like people were out there. There you go, a little bit of the snowflakes today, looks like in Northwest D.C. I'm hoping this is finished, at least for a little while.
At least it didn't stick around, you know. This just was something to look at today.
It was
didn't
pretty.
Necessarily saarily make things difficult for us. Gary McGrady said it was going to be a quick little clipper, and that's what it was. And so I think we're all just with frazzled nerves going, oh, please just get out of here.
Yeah, well, this is the kind of snow we can deal with, though. There wasn't any problems on the roads, not even on the sidewalks, and it just kind of put a nice white topping on what we had the other day. There is a little bit more coming. There's, believe it or not, another clipper. I don't think all of us will see the snow tomorrow like what we saw today. Some places got half an inch to an inch. Always hard to tell when you're putting it on, 4, 6, 8 inches that's already on the ground. Listen, here's what it looks like out there right now. A few clouds, of course, with the clipper. The clouds are breaking up a bit this afternoon and this evening. Perhaps you've seen a little bit of muted sunshine. To the east, that's the remnants of the clipper going by. We're already beginning to see a little bit of the beginnings of another one coming across. I don't think we have anything to worry about. If we get any more from the clipper tomorrow, it's going to be very, very light and stay primarily up to the north. We'll talk more about that here in just a bit. I just think some clouds this evening. Far north and west, you may get another snowflake. Otherwise, the winds will remain light. Temperatures below freezing, but not dropping quickly. And you can see at 11 o'clock, I think in town, we're still in the upper 20s, a little colder than that out in the suburbs. So technically, yes, there could be some slippery spots here or there. But with all the treatment we've had on the roads and whatnot the last couple of days, I think most of us will be in pretty good shape. Weekend forecast coming up. We'll talk about, is there any little glimmer of hope with a bit of a warm-up coming our way? That's all coming up in just a bit.
I'm crossing both of my fingers now for that one,
Cross
Gary.
everything. Toes, fingers, legs, whatever you have to cross.
Got it.
Please cross it.
All right, Gary, thank you.
It was a tragic chapter in American history.
I remember them turning up to an adult and saying it's blown up. And I remember adults telling children to, oh, stop that, stop it. And that's not true.
When we return, remembering the crew of the Challenger on the 25th anniversary of the shuttle explosion. A somber anniversary in American history. 25 years ago today, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded just 73 seconds after liftoff from Cape Canaveral. 7 crew members died, including schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe. Today, hundreds gathered at NASA's launch site to mark the 25th anniversary of the Challenger disaster, receiving words of hope from the widow of the Space Shuttle's commander.
We were stunned to see the unspeakable unfold right before our eyes. Could this really happen? No one believed it could happen. What should have been a day heralded for education turned to tragedy in a split second. Our loved ones were gone. Our nation grieved, and our future looked uncertain.
June Scobie-Rogers is a leader of the Challenger Center for Space Science Education. The project is designed to inspire kids to study science and explore the heavens.
The Space Shuttle Discovery is ready to return to the launch pad next week. NASA says technicians finished repairing insulating foam on Discovery's external tank. Now, problems with that tank surfaced back in November after a launch attempt got scrubbed because of a gas leak. Teams will spend the weekend preparing for Discovery's rollout on Monday.
A country in crisis in the Middle East. Angry mobs are carrying out vocal and violent protests in Egypt. We'll have the latest on the uprising.
Plus, a bank hostage shootout comes to a dramatic end tonight. A former police detective offers his expert analysis as the story continues to unfold. We'll be back in a moment. Recapping our big story tonight, a dramatic ending to a bank robbery and hostage situation in Tacoma Park, Maryland. The bank robber is dead. The teller he took hostage is okay. It all happened this morning at Capital One Bank at a branch there in Tacoma Park. Fox was overhead as the entire scene played out. The suspect took the teller hostage, then walked out of the bank. The teller was able to get away when the bank robber tripped on the snow. He chased after her. Police shot and killed him. Bill Wagner, former MPD police detective, was with us earlier today on the phone as this whole scene played out. Bill, thanks for joining us again this afternoon.
Sean, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
To watch this video, it is like something out of a movie. Have you ever seen anything like this or been a part of something like this?
We've had similar situations in the past, none that ended quite as climactic as this one did.
And we certainly learned since then officers were on the scene within a minute of this robber walking into the bank like this. In situations like this, what are police officers trained to do next?
Well, things have kind of changed over the years. Traditionally, it was the contain, excuse me, and negotiate. Within the last several years, it's more of a response, reactive type, proactive type of action where they don't really have time to put a plan together, and it's pretty much in their training to work together to try to come to a solution, which they did very successfully today.
Now, we're watching some of this dramatic video as that robber left the bank 14 minutes after he went in, and you can see police officers were surrounding him as he came out. I've heard people asking the question, why didn't the officers just take him out or try to tackle him from behind? As we could see there, he had a gun, what appeared to be the gun to the hostage's neck. You know, what do you do in a situation like this?
In a situation like this, the primary concern is that of the hostage, and their well-being and safety is the #1 priority. You know, you can second guess all you want. These guys had a big decision to make. They made the right decision today, and it showed in their response of their training and their experience level.
We've heard from some of the investigators that were there on the scene who saw video from inside the bank. They say when the bank robber first walked in, someone who was there to do bank business actually got into it with this guy and ended up getting pistol whipped. I mean, I guess it was a good thing for him to get involved, but what do you say to people who are the just bystanders there? You know, should they insert themselves in a situation like this?
You know, I would not recommend that, and that is something that has traditionally been trained not only to victims, but anyone involved in that situation. You know, normally the robber's goal is simply to get in and out as fast as they can with as much as they can. The minute they're out the door and making their getaway, the threat level has decreased almost to a minimal. And, you know, you're really wanting them to just more or less get the money and get away and let the investigators do their work and solve it later on.
All right. Bill Wagner, former MPD police detective, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sean.
A lot of us can't forget a dramatic crisis that is unfolding right now in Egypt as a revolt there continues. Protesters set fires through Cairo. Troops rolled into the streets in tanks. And tonight, the 30-year presidency of Egypt's leader is in serious question. Fox 5's Tom Fitzgerald has been following this all day from the newsroom now. Tom.
Yeah, Brian, this continues to develop minute by minute. We want to show you some video now, which is very important on how this all plays out. What you were looking at here is Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. He has not been seen in 4 days since these protests began to grip the streets throughout Egypt and specifically in the capital of Cairo. Mubarak was supposed to make this address hours ago, but then never appeared without explanation. Tonight, he is saying he is supporting democratic and political reforms within Egypt. He is defending his government's actions in cracking down at the protesters, but says he, for now, will remain in power. All of this comes on a day of dramatic developments, both in Cairo and here in Washington, as leaders of the United States chose their words carefully. Armored vehicles rolled into Egyptian streets Friday as thousands of protesters defied a government curfew and parts of Cairo burned. The protesters target Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. He's held power for 30 years, but calls for political and economic reforms are fueling protests.
The average Egyptian is suffering from low wages. All we want is a solution to this.
Clashes with police left 5 demonstrators killed with more than 800 injured. But when Egypt's army took to the streets waving flags, protesters welcomed them. But the government has struck back in other ways, cutting off internet access, restricting communications, and placing Nobel laureate Mohammed el-Baradei under house arrest.
If you look today, we don't have an internet, we don't have SMS. This is Egypt is coming back to the pre-information age.
Just days after similar protests in Tunisia, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said she was deeply concerned about the new protests, which are the result, she says, of long-standing grievances by Egyptians against their leaders.
And the Egyptian government needs to understand that violence will not make these grievances go away.
The White House, criticized by protesters for not condemning the crackdown, said the administration has long been privately urging Egypt to enact political reforms.
Those are discussions that are had at every opportunity when anybody from our government meets with the Egyptian government.
Egypt receives $1.3 billion in aid every year from the United States. And it's important to note there was no direct threat to end that today, but the White House did say in light of all this violence, that review will be underway by the United States government, Brian.
So we talked about the travel warnings, but we're also learning travel options in and out of Egypt are shutting down. What's the latest on that?
A couple of airlines made some announcements today, Brian. Egypt's national airline, Egypt Air, is suspending its flights from Cairo for the next 12 hours. The company does have service into Dulles International Airport and says its flights will be able to land in Egypt, but their departures were canceled from 9 p.m. Cairo time. Now, Delta, meanwhile, today announced that it will indefinitely suspend service to Cairo, and their last flight, Brian, will be tomorrow.
All right, Tom Fitzgerald tonight.
She disappeared a month ago in Maryland. The new push to find this teenage girl who vanished without a trace.
Was a former White House staff member found dead in a landfill in Delaware. Tonight, we know the cause of death. Details next. We now know what killed former White House staffer John Wheeler. A Delaware state medical examiner says Wheeler was assaulted and that the cause of death is listed as blunt trauma. Video surveillance cameras showed the 66-year-old wandering around Wilmington in a disoriented manner in the days before his body was found. Wheeler's body was found in a load of trash being dumped at the landfill on the morning of December 31st.
It's been 1 month since a North Carolina teenager was reported missing in Maryland. Her high school is now offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to her whereabouts. 17-year-old Felicia Barnes disappeared last month while visiting her half-older siblings in Baltimore over the holidays. The reward money comes from the school's memorial fund. Officials say they believe this is the best use for that fund.
Got a little bit of snow today, nothing like the storm, of course, thankfully. Gary's back to tell us when we can expect some of this to start melting.
4 months ago, I started, dreaming into doing a marathon. Now it's like that I see the marathon is within reach.
And they're training for a marathon, but these runners are quite unique. We'll explain when we come back.
Running a marathon takes total commitment, and there are some very unique runners in D.C. who are quietly training, not just for a race, but for life.
Fox 5's Beth Parker has their surprising and inspiring stories.
While most of us are still sleeping, Walter Barrera is training for a marathon. Walter is a runner. He is also homeless. That's right, this running group meets 3 days a week outside a Northeast D.C. homeless shelter.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Walter is a member of a group called Back on My Feet.
Let's run!
Drugs and alcohol cost Walter his job and the life he knew.
A year ago, it was a nightmare.
He got a grip on his addiction, but that wasn't the only change he needed.
High blood pressure, high cholesterol, all of those things. I just wanted a change for my life.
Then he heard about Back on My Feet.
We use running as a means to build strength, self-confidence, and self-esteem, but the bigger picture is using running as a metaphor for the rest of your life. So you take one step at a time, 1 mile at a time, and you apply that to the rest of your life.
And run he did.
I mean, at first, it hurt, but then I started liking it.
Some of the runners you see here live in shelters. Others are volunteers who provide encouragement.
We like to keep a 1-to-1 ratio because one of our golden rules is that nobody runs alone.
It's kind of like an extra family even. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it really is. We've become a very tight-knit group.
When I go out for a run, I feel that I find myself. I find my spirit. And the running is teaching me not to give up, even when I want to. If I just hold on one extra minute, that minute turns into an hour.
Now, Walter's an example of someone who had never run before. He started with just 1 block. His longest run now, 27 miles.
I now know that I can do a marathon, and for me that was like a huge daunting thing to do.
Show up for 90% of those 5:45 a.m. runs and you end up here in a program called Next Steps.
So your resume.
It's education and job training. There's Walter, no running shoes, a shirt and tie instead. He's getting his GED.
I felt that fear and I wanted to give up.
Walter says running kept him going. He hopes to go to college to become a social worker.
Giving back what I learned so far from this life.
He has already lived what seems like a lifetime.
I'm very proud. I'm very proud. I mean, this is the best gift that I could ever find.
The gift of knowing to always keep moving forward, even when the finish line seems far away. In Northeast Washington, Beth Parker, Fox 5 News.
What a great story. We certainly wish him and everybody else that are part of that well. All right, you can see it was pretty chilly out there for that 5:45 run they had this morning.
That's what time it was?
Hey, you want to know what's chilly? I believe they're doing the polar bear plunge starting today.
Didn't we have
going
some
into
of that
tomorrow?
There must be multiple plunges now.
This is the Maryland State Police one, I think.
Is that what that one is?
Perhaps,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Okay.
but I saw something somewhere, and if that's the case, jumping into the icy
Potomac.
no, the Chesapeake. Unbelievable. Can you imagine?
No, but in theory anyway, usually it's warmer when you get in. I mean, the
It's
water
frozen.
temperature is
The water's
warmer,
frozen.
right? But that
I don't
doesn't
know.
seem to make sense, does it?
That's, it's all
Right.
for a good cause. I
Yeah.
mean, they're raising money, but still, it's just chilly out there.
Exactly right. Right, and it's going to stay that way too. We'll probably crack 40 at least for a little while this weekend. More snow tomorrow, but listen, it's not going to be much, and I don't think most of us are going to see anything. If you're up to the north, you stand a slightly better chance of getting a few flurries and flakes out there tomorrow, at least for the first part of the day. Yes, we're tracking another storm for next week. We'll briefly talk a little bit about that on the 5-day forecast, but we're a long way away. 31 degrees at 7 o'clock, some clouds out there, and that's pretty much the story for the evening. The temperatures will be settling down below freezing, not crashing by any means. I mean, we have enough cloud cover to keep that from happening. The winds will be light. Out in the suburbs at 11 o'clock, perhaps down into the middle 20s or so, certainly below freezing, so just keep it safe out there, keep it slow tonight, and you should be in good shape. So we've had the clipper move through this afternoon, this morning and this afternoon actually, putting down anywhere between a half an inch and an inch of snow, and as you can see, as this comes across, everybody saw the snow. And back up to the northwest now, there is a little bit more, and then there's another clipper that's going to come through later tonight and for the first part of the day tomorrow. But again, all indications are that that next little clipper will mainly stay up to the north, so no big concern for us. 37 degrees in the city, 32 Gaithersburg, Dulles 34, Manassas already down below freezing, Culpeper right at freezing in Fredericksburg, 36 degrees. That current temperature of 37, by the way, is the warmest temperature I've seen so far in the city today. Mostly clouds overnight tonight. Now, low temperatures will be in the 20s for the suburbs, the lower 20s, I should say, for the suburbs. 21, 22, there could be a couple of 20s out there. Again, everybody below freezing, so technically speaking, we could have a couple of slippery spots out there overnight tonight on some of the untreated surfaces, if that's possible, because I think everything at this point has primarily been treated. 27 tomorrow morning, a snow shower, most of that up to the north and to the northwest. Mostly clouds at noon, some sunshine for everybody, it looks like, by late in the day. I'm not promising crystal blue sky or anything like that, but at least we'll get some sunshine and it'll take the temperatures into the upper 30s again. Here's Futurecast. Notice tomorrow morning, there's the clipper. It'll come on across by about lunchtime or so, and then it just kind of gets out of here. You can see most of that stays to the north of us. Sunday, we're in good shape. A couple of passing clouds here or there, and then we fly a little bit back out to the west. This is Monday morning, and notice snow up in the cold air. Very cold air coming down, by the way, from Canada. This will be real cold stuff. And then you got rain down coming up from the south, a little transition zone through the central plains. And this will be our next weather maker. Looks like it could be moving in for us late Monday night through the day on Tuesday and into Wednesday as well. Again, long way away. We'll just keep tracking it through the weekend. And you can see there on Tuesday and Wednesday that says wintry precip both days, because right now long-range guidance is suggesting that we could have a little bit of everything. Some rain, some sleet, some snow, some nightmares. You know what I'm talking about.
We've been through there. We've been through that.
Yes, and hopefully once that gets through, we could have a little bit of a nicer period. So
Let's get to the nicer period.
yeah, you like that?
Yes. You laughed at that one.
Well, yeah, you know.
He's just overly skeptical.
It's still
of the weather
January.
man.
I'm not hopeful. But.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Now to the talk of the town on TMZ, Charlie Sheen's health scare. TMZ's Dax Holt is live in L.A. So, Dax, what happened?
So basically, he had a 36-hour bender at his house. He had a huge party, had a lot of people over, and next thing you know, there were people knocking on the door, bringing in a briefcase full of cocaine, and to which he began smoking and drinking throughout the night. And I think that's honestly the problem. He was up all night long doing these drugs and alcohol, and next morning he had someone called 911. He wound up in the hospital. Here's the thing, it was for lower abdominal pain. Well, after all the tests, they came out saying that it was a stomach hernia, and a stomach hernia that he's been dealing with for quite some time. So they are blaming it on that. Whether that had anything to do with the drugs he was doing the night before, I'm not sure.
So what's the deal? Is he out of the hospital or back to work now?
He snuck out of the hospital late last night, and he is now going to be heading to work at 2.5 Men next week. He's not going to rehab, none of that, just going back to the set, which, you know, I know is great for the show and all, but for his personal life, I gotta say, you can only take so many nights of boozing up and doing drugs before it catches up with you. And, you know, he's so talented. He's like the last person that I would want to find, you know, to have to do a horrible story about, because he does this weekend after weekend after weekend, and he's killing his body.
Certainly, we all hope he gets together. Dax Holt with TMZ on TV. We'll see you guys right here at 6:30 on Fox 5. Thanks, Dax.
Coming up on the News Edge at 6, we're following, of course, all the latest developments on the dramatic bank robbery, hostage crisis, and shooting in Maryland this morning. It's been a little over a month since President Obama signed a bill repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but openly serving in the military, far from being a done deal. Find out why. And the government official who let workers leave just 2 hours early as the snow began to fall Wednesday says he doesn't regret his decision, but he would do one thing differently. Find out what that is at 6.
Humans apparently aren't the only ones who can put one foot in front of the other. Take a look. This gorilla named Am Bam is famous for walking upright on his hind legs. See, right? Take a look at that. Cameras captured the western lowland gorilla strolling around his enclosure in the UK. As you can imagine, he is now an internet sensation, getting more than 250,000 hits on YouTube. It is Friday, time for the Fox 5 High School Basketball Game of the Week. Our winning matchup with more than 59% of the total vote, the Wilson Tigers versus the Cardozo Clerks. Lindsay Murphy is live in Northwest with more of the pregame action. Lindsay?
Hey, Sean, yeah, most schools were off today. However, D.C. schools did have classes. They had a 2-hour delay, so all their activities going on tonight will happen. I'm actually at Theodore Roosevelt High School right now because this is the home gym for the Cardozo basketball team. They don't have a home court they play on, so this is where they play their games. And tonight, they're going to face Wilson. I believe Cardozo's coach just arrived over my shoulder. I'd like to welcome him in right now. Greg McCants, thank you for joining us. You're making me nervous, man. You guys have already played Wilson once this year, lost by 9 points. What has to change this time around to get a victory?
Well, tonight we have to be a little bit tougher on defense and to take better shots on offense. And I think as long as we do those things, the outcome will be a little bit different tonight.
I know your team last year was a playoff team. 5-10 this year. Is this a rebuilding season? Have you been dealing with injuries? Why some of the struggles this season?
Well, we've been rebuilding for the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, we've graduated an average of 7 seniors from each team. So we're rebuilding constantly in this time. So now we have some young guys who we can depend on for the next few years.
Talk to me about this Wilson team a little bit. 13-7 this season. What makes them a dangerous team?
Well, first of all, they have a very good coach, and he's kind of like what we're doing at Cardozo. He wants to get the best out of the kids, and he shows them how to do the things the right way. And they have a couple of guys on that team that are very good and that we have to look out for tonight.
I know you guys can't play on your home court, but do you feel like you have home court advantage here at Roosevelt?
No, not exactly. It's almost like a road trip every time we play a game. It's always what's the next gym we're going to play in. And we just load them up on the bus and we just come out and play a good game.
Well, I appreciate your time, Coach McCants. Best of luck to Cardozo tonight. Wilson and Cardozo not tipping off until 8 o'clock tonight. We've got the highlights coming up tonight at 10 o'clock. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Lindsay, thank you. And, of course, you can cast your vote for next week's Game of the Week. There are the contenders. You can also find it all on our website, myfoxdc.com. Now, you can vote online or you can text the school name that you want to see in the next Game of the Week competition to 29473. Thanks so much for joining us tonight at 5. The News Edge at 6 starts right now.